Hi, and welcome tonight. This is our Art of Advocacy live show on Facebook. I hope you join us each Thursday evening at 7 o'clock Mountain Time. Tonight, our Art of Advocacy show is going to be all about accommodations, and not just any old accommodations, but accommodations that you or your classroom teacher can buy at office supply stores. So in case you don't know who I am, I'm Charmaine Thaner. And when I was a special education teacher and a classroom teacher, I loved brainstorming and making different kinds of accommodations and modifications for my students. Then when our son Dylan was born, who happens to have Down syndrome, and when Dylan went to school, again, I just thought it was fun, and I loved helping teachers brainstorm and think of individual accommodations and modifications that would help Dylan. When he was first going to school, it was back in the early 90s, and students weren't typically included in general education classrooms if they had disabilities. Luckily, we had an elementary school staff that was willing to be open-minded, and through lots of individualized supports, Dylan did really well in his general education classes. So the reason why we're going to talk about accommodations is because that's one example of individualized supports that can make a difference for your child. Because what we don't want to see is your child being an island in the mainstream. And that means sitting off by themselves. So here's a cartoon that's entitled Island in the Mainstream. And in the cartoon you see a classroom set of desks with students sitting at them, all facing forward, looking at their teacher who's sitting behind her desk. And then way in the back of the room, you see a separate table with an adult and a student working at that table. And the caption of the cartoon says, Mrs. Jones and Mrs. Cooper are still trying to figure out why Fred doesn't feel like he's a part of the class. So I want us to prevent this from happening. Personally and professionally, I'm a big supporter of kids being included in general education classrooms. So let's figure out how we can do that. Now, last week we talked about modifications, and we had a special guest, Nicole Edricks, and she gave specific examples of modifications. And one of the parents in the comment box said, you know, I hear adaptations, modifications, accommodations. What are all these terms and what do they all mean? So to me, I look at accommodations as being that overall big picture, that umbrella. And under that, there's two different types of adaptations. There's accommodations and there's modifications. So before we jump into just a quick review of what modifications are, I see we have a couple people on with us. So if you can give me a like or some love with a heart so I know that you can hear and see us well, that would be awesome. So we are going to go into those office supplies. I just quickly want to make sure we understand the difference between modifications and accommodations. So let's look at the next slide. Modifications change what your child is learning or what a student is learning in the classroom. So when a student is working on modified work, that means that the work is not at the same level as what his peers are learning. The important thing to remember is that even a student working on modified work can still be included in general education classrooms. So this is one example of, and I got to make sure it doesn't shine here in the light, a modified textbook that we used with Dylan. What we would do is, no matter what his class was studying that year, we would try to find high interest books about that topic. So instead of having to read the textbook, the grade level textbook, which would have been very difficult for him, instead we would get books like this that Dylan would use in the classroom and also have his peers help him with it. So the reason why we like this is because there were lots of illustrations, a little bit of text, so it wasn't, as intimidating as his regular social studies textbook. Either the teacher or a peer could read this out loud to Dylan. They could talk about the illustrations. If it was a day where you knew he probably wouldn't listen that well for very long, they could just read the captions under the illustrations. And Dylan was able to, learn, in this case about the American Revolutionary War, basic concepts, key concepts about that topic because we used a modified book with him. So that's just one example. Like I said, last week, Nicole gave us a lot of examples, and I'll give you that link to the show after this video is done tonight. So let's jump in and talk about accommodations. Accommodations change how a student is going to be learning. So it's either how the difference would be a teacher would present information in a different way. So instead of relying on the textbook, there might be an audio book of the same textbook, the same level, but the student could listen to it instead of reading. Not only do accommodations change how the student gets the information, but accommodations can also change how a student shows the teacher that they've learned material. So it could be, instead of a 5-page book report, maybe it's a PowerPoint about the book that the student read. He's still doing the same level of work that the other students are doing, but he's just presenting it in a different way. So before we get into those office supplies, they're coming, I just wanted to quickly look at the different types of accommodations. And these are the types of accommodations that you will probably see in your child's IEP. So there's environmental, where maybe your student is sitting in the front of the room to see the board better, or maybe he has preferential seating for the back of the room because it's more quiet. Presentation is one type of accommodation, how the teacher is going to present the information in a different way. Response is how the student is going to show the teacher what he or she has learned. Quantity, that type of accommodation is real common, where instead of 20 spelling words, it might just be 12 spelling words each week. Or instead of doing all the math problems for homework, he just does the even math problems for his assignment or for homework. So time is another pretty common one, where if a student needs extra time to complete an assignment or homework or a test, he might have a time accommodation written in his IEP. So the other thing that I found that is so much fun is from Bricks Publishing. They have this awesome handout that has over 100 ideas for modifications and accommodations. So if you would love that, type yes in the comments. Even if you're watching the replay on this, go ahead. Oops, I hear my phone, sorry. So even if you're watching the replay, go ahead and put yes in the comments, because I keep coming back to these Facebook videos and I'll see your yes, and I'll make sure you get that link. So I want to give a quick shout out. We have Marlo. She said, can't see and video freezes. So you might try seeing if you have a good internet connection, Marlo. Yael says, these sound good, starting to drive. So she's going to catch us later. Sherry said that Charmaine's using slides. That might seem like it's freezing. So, yeah, Marlo, let us know if that's still a problem, because we certainly don't want you to, that's real frustrating when the video stops. But Sherry typed in yes, that she would love, so you can give us some love. And Erica typed in yes, and I'll make sure you get those links right after our show is done. So let's go to my shopping bag. Like I said, I love shopping in office supply stores. It's more fun for me than going clothes shopping. So there's a variety of things. I showed this if you saw our kind of introductory video the other day. This is called, and make sure I get to see it, you can see it here in the camera. It's called Velcro picture paper. And you can actually use this in your printer, and you can print out photographs, you could print out clip art. So, and then you can use the Velcro pictures on, like if you have a visual schedule that you're using for the student, instead of printing out and laminating pictures and then attaching Velcro on the back of it, you could just use this Velcro picture paper, print out your visual schedule, print out, if there's any pictures you use on a low-tech communication board, and then you just are able to stick it right there. If you have the other half of the Velcro, or if you have fabric that Velcro will stick to, you can use that. But this is just another way to do some things that currently a lot of teachers use as far as visual schedules, pictures for communication boards. And it's a nice thing that you can actually print, use photographs that you have on your computer or clip art and just print it directly to this Velcro paper. So that's pretty awesome. So let's see what else I have in here. It's like, this is a great thing for middle school or high school students. If your middle school and high school still have lockers, that is like one of the things that causes the most anxiety for some kids is trying to memorize their locker combination. So you can find a variety of different kinds of locks. This one was at the office store, and instead of having a number combination, you have the directional arrows, and you push those in a certain order, and that will open up your locker. I've also seen parents buy a lock that instead of having the combination will have a key to it, and the student will use the key to open their locker. So this is a real easy accommodation. You want your child to still have a locker like everybody else does at school, but if learning that combination is hard, then you can find this adaptive kind of lock that you could use. So let's see what else I find in here. This is a photo flip book. And again, all of these things I've picked up, usually at the clearance part of the back of the store. So this I got for like 50 cents. And you can make your own photo book. And I just want to make sure we don't have a glare there. You can print your own photos and then assemble them into a book. I'm going to show you another version that we did for Dylan when he was real young. And it was difficult when he was in kindergarten and first grade to be able to talk when it was his sharing day and share things with the class. So we would put together different photo books, and in it we would have, it was just like one of those real easy things that you could slide in a photo, and then we would also type a caption and put it in. So we were introducing Dylan to reading words, but in case he wasn't able to read the whole sentence, he had the photograph there that he could share with the kids and talk about his t-ball game that he participated in over the weekend, or, you know, whatever the activity was. So photo books are a great way for kids to be able to share information, especially when, you know, they're working on verbal language skills, or, like I said, working on reading skills. So including that visual cue is really helpful. So let's see, I have some other things in here. So this is you can buy a whole box of these if you want, so they'll last forever. But this is meant to put business cards in it, so they have different sections. And so instead what you could do, and all these plastic things are glaring, is you could put in different questions and answers. And kids they could either use a dry erase marker and match them. They, you know, if they've got the physical dexterity, they could pull them out of the slots and put them across from each other so they match. You can, like in this example, you could use it for math problems, you could use it for geography, you could use it for picture, you know, sight words. But like I said, this is just you know, plastic insert that business people keep in notebooks with all their business cards, but you can turn it into an accommodation. Instead of your child working on a worksheet, which might be like real boring after a while, you could spice things up and have the teacher use something like this, or this is something that you could use at home to help them, you know, reinforce those skills they're learning in the classroom. Let's see. So this is something that you can print out. Let me peel off these Post-it notes. So Post-it notes are like one of those things that, of course, are real common that you can buy in office supply stores. And there's like dozens and dozens of ways that you can use Post-it notes as teaching materials. So that's pretty awesome. One of the things that I used to do was to type up, and I have a template that I can give you too that has the boxes. So again, this is just kind of a mishmash of different examples to show you. But if you were using this as a math sheet, all of your squares here would have math problems on it. Or if you're using it for story starters, all of these would have examples of story starters or whatever that you would give to the child. And then what you would do is you would give them some Post-it notes. They would write the answer to, like if it's a math problem, and just, you know, stick it to the math problem and they would have their answer. Again, they're working on, you know, concepts, but so many of our kids need so much repetition in order to learn concepts. And sometimes as teachers and as parents, we just need to come up with other ways for our kids to practice those skills. So using Post-it notes for an answer on, you know, a simple piece of paper, you don't have to type it, you can just write it out. That might be something fun that would keep your child engaged or motivated. So let's see, I've got this bag of tricks. So this is something that I showed the other day when I did my intro video for our class tonight. And this is a whiteboard, and one side of it has the handwriting lines on it, and the other side is blank. So this is really cool. I mean, you could do a variety of things with this. You could have the child write a message, you know, either on the lines for the handwriting, and then he would hold it up and the class would have to read his message. You could use it for math problems, especially for word problems. You could have your child or the student draw a picture that goes with the math problem. So if they're not able to write the numbers, just drawing a picture that would show, the answer to the math word problem is a way that they could use it. You could have students practice their spelling words on the side where the handwriting is. You could have them copy a poem from the board or something like that. So these whiteboards, usually you can get them pretty inexpensively at your office supply store. So let me take a quick break here. So Sherry says to double check my internet because it's on 1 second, then freezes for a second, then plays. Oh dear. Make sure nothing needs updating. So I've got my cable plugged in here. So I'm going to try a different setting here on the internet. So let me just talk for a minute and see. So Sherry, is that any better? Kelby, I see you've joined us. Hi. So if somebody can tell us if the video is doing better, because Marlo had told us at the beginning it was freezing, and I thought it might have been their internet, but maybe it's mine. So if somebody can give us a thumbs up if the video seems to be doing better on this setting. And I'll continue on with our office supplies that you can use. Okay, here's one that I used a lot when I was teaching, and it's highlighting tape. So instead of a highlighter, you can buy, it looks like Scotch tape, but what's really cool about it is you can pull off, a section, however long you want, and you can have the student tear it off, or you can tear it off for them. And then they can use this highlighting tape, and they can put it either in a textbook or on a worksheet where they want to highlight maybe the directions. And what is so awesome about it is that when you're done, you can just peel this tape off. So instead of ruining the textbook with highlighter, you can pick up this highlighting tape at your office supply store, and they usually have, the different popular colors like yellow, pink, green, things like that. So I see, so if anybody else can let us know, I want to make sure our video is doing okay. I don't see any other comments, so hopefully we're not freezing up, because I hate when it does that. Makes it very annoying. This is another example of a visual schedule, and this is just, paper inserted into these plastic overlay kind of things that you can buy a whole box of at the office supply store. And this is actually a schedule that my son Dylan started using when he moved out of our house and was living by himself. Well, actually with a couple of roommates. I'm trying to get this so it shows good. And what he would do is write down the time that he was going to get up, check it off when he actually got up out of bed. He loves these big pretzels for breakfast. He would write down the time that he's going to have breakfast, check it off. So, and then on the back, because it's this plastic thing, you can also put in a second sheet. So visual schedules like this are real handy. You can use dry erase markers and write on them and erase them and use them over again. So that comes in handy. And I think I have another example. Yeah, so this one is for math problems, so a math worksheet. So if this is something, again, like I said, that a lot of our kids have to practice concepts over and over, and if you can give it to them in just a different way, it can make a difference. So go ahead, you can buy, a whole box of these plastic overlays for, not very much money. And, as a parent, You can buy it and send it into the school, or because your kids are supposed to be getting a free appropriate public education, you can go to the office store, find some of these items that you think would be great for your child to use, make a list, and you can share it with the teacher and or the IEP team and request that they buy some of these items for accommodations that your child could use at school. So we still have some more in my shopping bag. I hope the video isn't freezing up on you guys. So talking about highlighters, this is another one that is fun. And I actually use things like that, or things like this, when I'm highlighting things on IEPs. So for some students, just having this different kind of shape that they can grip, if I can get the top off. So it's almost like for their whole fist, they could hold it and then they can highlight, things that they need to pay attention to, keywords and directions or things like that. Because it has the 3 different colors, sometimes just changing the color makes it more exciting for kids. So as many different choices as we can give our students, that this is something different, this is something fun, it will help them stay engaged with their work. Now, let's see what else we have. Oh, these are great. These are called Post-it note tabs. And my camera is backwards, so I keep wanting to change how things are. But this is like a Post-it note, except it also has the tab to it. This is really great to use with older students that are starting to use more textbooks, so middle school and high schoolers. And what they can do when they're reading a textbook or even a novel, and they're not sure, they have a question about it, they're not sure what a word means, they can pull one of these off, and because it's a Post-it note, they can just put it on the edge of the textbook or the novel. They can write their question down here. And later, when the teacher is conferencing with them and checking their understanding of the material, the teacher can go right to these tabs in the textbook or in the novel, and she can see what questions the student had. So those are really helpful to have, so students make sure they get all their questions answered. This I showed in our preview. This is a luggage tag, and it's like, yeah, amazing how many things you can find in an office supply store. What I did is I just used the inside part where you would write your name and address, and instead made a list of what the student had to remember to pack in his backpack before he went home. So he would attach this luggage tag to his backpack. It would give him a checklist of all the things he had to remember to take home. The parents could also use this for all the things that have to be back in the backpack when he comes back to school in the morning. So again, you can get luggage tags in different themes. If they're not a baseball fan, you can find other ones. But the whole idea is to use this on their backpack so they remember, what they're supposed to be putting in that backpack. Let's see what else we have. A couple more things here. These, like I said, there's like dozens and dozens of things that you can do with Post-it notes. And I'm going to see if I hold this a little closer. So this set of Post-it notes happens to have them numbered 1, 2, 3, 4. For kids that need those step-by-step directions, like a lot of times you'll have an accommodation on an IEP that says to simplify directions or to break things down step by step for what a student has to do. Well, just using something like this sometimes can be a little bit more exciting than the teacher constantly repeating the directions. So the teacher or somebody else could write down the first 4 steps that the child has to do. They can have this Post-it note right on their desk and know exactly, first you do this, then you do this. When kids are younger, we use a real simplified first, then, you do this first, then you do this. For older students or more mature students, you could use something like this numbered Post-it set. So let me see if I have anything else. I don't. So those are my Post-it notes and office supply hints that you can use. Now, the other thing I thought of, this is my bonus one. This is not something that you can buy in an office supply store, but I thought, wow, maybe I should do a whole video on things that you can get at the hardware store that could be accommodations, but I probably won't do that one. But this is something that you can buy for, I think it's like less than $1. It's part of a PVC pipe. And instead of using it for plumbing, what you can do is buy a whole set of this for your class or have one at home for your child. And when they're reading, if they use this, it gives them this almost like echo, and they can hear that auditory feedback when they're reading. For young kids that are just starting to learn how to read, it's really hard for them to read silently. You almost always hear little voices in the classroom. So if they need that auditory feedback, this just PVC pipe is something that really is something that can be helpful. When I was a second grade teacher, instead of just buying a couple of these for students that I knew would probably really need them, I went ahead and bought a class set, because when you bring in something new to the classroom, almost everybody wants to try it at first. And then it's interesting, you see kids stop using them that really don't need it, but the kids that need that auditory feedback, you'll see them going and picking up one of these at the reading center that they can use. So tonight has been all about accommodations that you can have for your child, either at home when you're working with them, or things that the classroom teacher can use. And the whole idea is to make sure that our kids have the supports and services that they need so they can be included and be successful in the general ed classroom. Next week, I'm going to be giving you some more tips and strategies for making sure your child's included and that they're able to be successful in general ed classrooms. And I wanted to let you know to save the date for the last Thursday night of April 27th. We have Dr. Julie Costin from Syracuse University as our guest. And if you've heard Julie speak at conferences or read any of her books, you know she's an awesome speaker that has so many tips and strategies for how to include kids with disabilities in the general ed classroom. So that's our last Thursday of April. Make sure you like this page, Visions and Voices Together, so you'll get notifications of our weekly meetings. And in closing, I wanted to share this quote that I love from Carol Tomlinson. And she says, "What we have in common makes us human. How we differ makes us individuals." So my challenge for you is to see things in a different way. Not just how we can use office supplies in a different way, but my challenge is for how we can look at students and our own children in different ways, and how we can show others how capable they are when they get those appropriate supports and services. So I'm hoping that you will join us again next Thursday night at 7 o'clock Mountain Time. And until next week, I challenge you to go out there and look at things in a different way this week, and make sure you help others know that your child is capable. So until then, I'm Charmaine Thaner, and enjoy your week.